Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. The Young and the Restless spoilers for Monday, July 21st, predict that Billy Abbott will abandon his Jack Abbott alliance and join forces with Phyllis Summers to clear Kane Ashby's record. On the train, Nick will criticize Phyllis again for protecting Kane, but she will suspect they are both being set up. Of course, Nick will continue to believe Kane is guilty, especially after hearing the news about the security tape being wiped. When Nick claims he's heading down the mountain to call the cops, Phyllis advises against it since the terrain is too perilous. Nick will still intend to go, so Sharon Newman will accompany him in his sleeping car and insist on going as well. Carter will arrive at Nick's door accompanied by a large security guard. Carter will place Nick under home arrest for the safety of Mr. Dumas and to provide peace of mind to the other people on the property. Nick will object, but Carter will point out that the security guard carries a weapon and caution Nick not to make him use it. Carter will admit, after Sharon walks forward, that he was unaware she was standing there. Once Carter says Sharon must accompany them, she will be placed under house arrest as well. According to other YNR spoilers, Billy will have a fierce confrontation with Jack and leave their relationship. Billy will make it apparent that he can find someone else to invest, and Jack will presume he means Kane. Billy will then have a strategy session with Phyllis, during which they would discuss his ambition for Chancellor and her desire for a career. The key to achieving their aims will be clearing Kane's name, therefore Phyllis and Billy will work together to make it happen. Kyle Abbott's sleeping automobile will make it appear as if he is going to sleep with Audra Charles. Audra and Kyle will kiss passionately as they lean back on the bed, but Kyle will quickly stop and say he is aware of her plan. Kyle will only be trying Audra to see how far she will go to carry out Victor Newman's plan. Kyle will insist Audra has been conspiring to harm his relationship with Claire Newman, but he will defend their strong love and point out that Audra failed. When Kyle accuses Audra of using Damian Kane's death as a manipulative tactic, she will explain that she did not. Audra will deny scheming for Victor and claim that everything happened on its own, but Kyle will not believe her. In the end, a defeated Audra will exit Kyle's train car, so stay tuned for updates on what she will do next. According to the Young and the Restless spoilers, Audra will struggle to overcome this setback, but she isn't one to give up. The quiet town of Genoa City was once again rocked by controversy, as the startling arrest of Phyllis Summers sent shockwaves across the city, leaving neighbors and old adversaries alike astonished by the explosive revelations that surfaced as a result. Phyllis, known for her fiery temper, crafty plans, and tireless pursuit of her own ambitions, had long been a divisive character, but no one could have guessed the depths of deception that would be revealed when police came at the Grand Phoenix to arrest her. The dramatic incident played out in front of several critical witnesses, including her estranged son Daniel Romalotti, who watched in terror as his mother was brought away in handcuffs, her defiant stare hiding what many felt was a deep-seated fear of the repercussions finally catching up with her. The charges against her were serious: fraud, conspiracy, and even suspected ties to a broader criminal network that had been working under the surface in Genoa City for months. As the news spread like wildfire, murmurs filled the air about what had ultimately brought Phyllis down, with many guessing that her most recent scheme had failed catastrophically, leaving her vulnerable to the enemies she had made over the years. Meanwhile, in a stunning twist that no one saw coming, Nick Newman was released from police detention after new evidence surfaced, exonerating him from the accusations that had threatened to destroy his career and family. The timing of these two incidents was too suspicious to overlook, prompting many to speculate if there was a link between Phyllis's demise and Nick's unexpected escape. For weeks, Nick had been entangled in a court struggle that had split the Newman family, with his siblings debating whether he was actually innocent or simply profiting from the family's wealth and position. Victoria Newman, ever the devoted sister, had remained by him, using every resource at her disposal to clear his name, whilst Adam Newman, ever the skeptic, had openly questioned whether justice was being served or if yet another Newman was avoiding blame. The tension between the siblings had reached a boiling point, and Victor Newman was watching from the shadows, his steely vision missing nothing as he planned his next move. The revelation that Nick had been framed, and that the evidence against him had been fabricated, shocked the Newman Enterprises boardroom, leaving even the most cutthroat corporate players dumbfounded. But the most pressing concern on everyone's mind was who had set Nick up and why. As the pieces began to fall into place, a darker truth emerged, one that involved Phyllis in a network of deceit so complex that even her closest allies were caught off guard. Diane Jenkins, her lifelong adversary, was among the first to see the pattern, her keen intuition informing her that Phyllis's arrest was no accident. Diane and Phyllis had been in a terrible dispute for years, with betrayals, manipulations, and even physical confrontations. Diane understood how far Phyllis was ready to go, and she spent no time digging into the facts of the case, desperate to discover the whole extent of Phyllis's involvement. What she discovered was more terrible than she could have imagined. Phyllis hadn't been working alone. She had been working with a dark character from Genoa City's past, someone with a personal grudge against the Newmans, who had been pulling strings behind the scenes for months. The name that surfaced sent shivers down the spines of those who recalled the havoc he had once caused: Jeremy Stark, the merciless scam artist who nearly destroyed numerous lives before disappearing under unknown circumstances. His return to Genoa City had been kept secret, his movements meticulously planned to avoid detection until the ideal time to strike. Stark had always been a brilliant manipulator, and his partnership with Phyllis provided him with the perfect inside track to gradually undermine the Newmans' enterprise. They had arranged Nick's arrest, planting false evidence and influencing witnesses to ensure he was held accountable for crimes he had not committed. But, like all deceitful alliances, theirs had begun to fracture, and when Phyllis felt Stark was about to betray her, she took desperate measures to protect herself, actions that eventually led to her downfall. The treachery hurt deep, leaving Phyllis isolated and with the very real threat of spending years in prison. Her son Daniel was horrified, divided between his love for his mother and the terrible knowledge that she had once again put her own selfish desires before of her family. Summer Newman, her daughter, was equally devastated, unable to reconcile the mom she had always protected with the cold, calculating criminal shown in the media. The Abbott family, who were no strangers to Phyllis's plots, watched with a mix of relief and sadness, knowing that while justice was done, the collateral damage would be felt for years to come. Jack Abbott, who had previously loved Phyllis dearly, found himself reminiscing on how many times he had given her the benefit of the doubt, only to be burnt in the end. This time, there would be no atonement, no last-minute rescue. Phyllis had crossed a line that she couldn't get out of. Meanwhile, Nick's release caused its own set of issues. Though he was free, his reputation had already suffered, and not everyone was eager to welcome him back. Sharon Rosales, his ex-wife and close confidant, remained by him, expressing her unshakable support, but even she couldn't ignore the residual concerns that had been instilled in those around them. Ray Rosales, her husband, was one of the detectives on Nick's case, and while the evidence had cleared him, Ray's intuition told him there was more to the story. His suspicions were only heightened when he began investigating Jeremy Stark's abrupt reappearance, revealing a trail of financial transactions and encrypted communications that pointed to a far broader plot. Someone had paid for Stark's return, someone with deep resources and a personal interest in seeing the Newmans collapse. As the investigation progressed, alarming new details emerged. Stark had not been operating alone, and his benefactor was none other than Ashland Locke, the disgraced former CEO of Locke Communications who had gone after his own company crumbled. Locke had sworn vengeance on Victor Newman for destroying his life, and what better way to exact retribution than by killing Victor's beloved son? The levels of deception were thick, with Phyllis unintentionally becoming a pawn in a far wider game than she thought. Her imprisonment had been unavoidable once she joined herself with Stark, but even she hadn't expected Locke's involvement. With both Stark and Locke still at large, the inhabitants of Genoa City were left wondering who would be the next victim in this high-stakes game of vengeance. For Nick, the incident served as a wake-up call, forcing him to accept the hard fact that his family's wealth and influence made them continuous targets. Victor, ever the strategist, had already begun bolstering their fortifications, but Nick understood that no amount of money or influence could completely protect them from the adversaries they had accumulated over the years. His connection with his siblings remained tense, especially with Adam, whose skepticism had created a schism between them. Victoria, while relieved by his exoneration, couldn't ignore the sensation that this wasn't finished. And then there was Phyllis, who was once a lover and a friend, but is now a cautionary story of what happens when vengeance consumes a person completely. As Genoa City waited for the aftermath, one thing was certain: Phyllis Summers' incarceration and Nick Newman's freedom were just the beginning. With Jeremy Stark and Ashlyn Locke still on the run and the Newman family more split than ever, the stage was set for a fight that would test loyalties, ruin alliances, and reveal secrets no one expected. The peaceful hum of the city's streets belied the storm forming beneath the surface, a storm that would not spare anyone. And as the sun set over the skyline, Genoa City residents wondered who would be left standing when the dust fell. Phyllis's world came crashing down as sirens sounded outside the Grand Phoenix and police swooped in, cuffing her in front of a bewildered audience. She attempted to remain calm, holding her chin up in practiced disdain, but everyone who knew her could see the terror in her eyes. For weeks, whispers circulated throughout Genoa City about cover-ups, manipulation, and betrayal. And now it seems like the storm had caught up with her. Phyllis Summers had always lived perilously close to the brink, but this time she had pushed too far. Her arrest caused shockwaves across the community, with jaws dropping and alliances breaking. Everyone wanted to know the same thing: what secret had been buried so deeply that even Phyllis couldn't talk her way out. She had met with Heather moments before her arrest and attempted to strike a final deal, hoping to rescue herself by throwing someone else under the bus. Heather, however, stood firm and refused to be influenced. She told Phyllis unequivocally that the evidence was overwhelming, and no amount of haggling would make it go away. In the back of the squad car, Phyllis sat silently, reflecting on every decision, lie, and manipulation that had led to this point. She reminded herself that she had done all for her children, Daniel and Summer. She had tried to be tough and protect them at all costs. But suddenly, as the flashing red and blue lights reflected off the glass, she understood that the price had grown prohibitively expensive even for her. Meanwhile, Nick Newman was standing outside the police station, bewildered but free. Just hours before, he'd been confined to an interrogation room, accused of obstruction and suspected of involvement in the very controversy that was now engulfing Phyllis. For days, he had endured rumors and chilly eyes, seeing those closest to him retreat in doubt. Sharon had questioned him several times, asking whether he knew more than he admitted. Even Noah, who had always protected his father, appeared rattled. Nick had remained silent, refusing to name names or point fingers, not because he was guilty, but because he knew who was. And now that the DA has withdrawn the charges against him and confirmed his release, the entire picture is emerging. Nick was not the genuine culprit, the one who arranged the entire affair. It was Phyllis. She had deceived everyone, including Nick, pulling strings from behind the curtain like a master puppeteer. It began with a business arrangement, a clandestine alliance designed to expose Tucker and Audra, but as she dug deeper, she became increasingly desperate. Phyllis had passed a line that she couldn't go back from. She had framed Nick to avoid suspicion of herself. She had forged emails, planted digital evidence, and even staged a break-in at Newman Enterprises to make it appear that Nick was participating in corporate sabotage. It was all part of a sick strategy to keep her own secret hidden, one that may destroy her if discovered. And now it has. The devastating information that threw Phyllis into a spiral had deeper roots than anyone thought. Years ago, while working for a biotech firm in Los Angeles, she became connected with Malcolm Reyes, a bright but controversial scientist. They had collaborated to create a mixture that had the ability to alter human DNA, an experimental medicine that could revolutionize the medical field. However, the experiment was discontinued after a whistleblower accused the corporation of unethical human testing. The fallout had been quick and severe. Malcolm disappeared. The research was buried. What about Phyllis? She got away with a little sum in hush money and a commitment never to speak about it again. That long-buried secret reappeared when someone started blackmailing her. At first, it was only cryptic texts. Then came the demands. Finally, the blackmailer threatened to reveal her involvement in the cover-up unless she turned over sensitive Newman files that might be sold on the black market. Phyllis went into a frenzy. She didn't want to betray the Newmans, but she didn't see another option. That's when she took the catastrophic decision: frame Nick, leak the data in his name, and make it appear as if he had gone rogue. She was confident she could clear it all up before anyone got too close. However, the plot went awry when Summer discovered the edited files on Nick's laptop and faced her mother in tears, screaming for the truth. Phyllis had always been adept at hiding secrets, but this time her daughter's anguish was too great to ignore. Summer, outraged and distraught, confided in Kyle, who then went to Jack. Jack, feeling betrayed on all levels, faced Phyllis with a mix of sadness and rage, wanting to know why she did it. Phyllis had no defense. She could only sob as she confessed to everything: blackmail, cover-up, and treachery. Jack turned away from her, explaining that he couldn't help her this time. And so the dominoes fell. Heather received a complete confession. The DA had no choice but to proceed with the arrest. Nick was cleared, leaving Phyllis to face the repercussions of her own conduct. As the word went around Genoa City, reactions varied. Victor, the family protector, was happy Nick had been released but enraged that someone so close had betrayed them. Nikki sought answers and wondered if Phyllis had ever truly changed. Summer shut down emotionally, unable to accept that her mother had attempted to harm the man she had loved. Daniel, ever the mediator, paid Phyllis a visit in jail and implored her to tell the truth, not only to the authorities, but also to herself. Phyllis sat in her cage, trying to muster the courage to confront her actions. The irony was not lost on her. She had spent her entire life battling to maintain control and never become a victim. Yet here she was, caught in a system she couldn't change, with nowhere to go. She remembered Nick and how he had looked at her when the truth came out, not with hatred, but with disappointment. That was somewhat worse. He had trusted her, and she had thrown it away as if it didn't matter. She told herself it was for survival, but deep down, she knew it was also for pride. Phyllis couldn't handle being perceived as weak, losing to someone like Audra, Tucker, or anybody else who dared to question her. She fought dirty, and she lost. Now, as the days grew into weeks and the trial approached, Phyllis was forced to confront the woman she had become. Gone was the intelligent, confident redhead who could outwit everyone in the room. In her place was someone shattered, someone who had gone too far in the pursuit of self-preservation. But Phyllis Summers never stays down for long. Even in jail, she began to consider methods to change the story. She began gathering information, using her charm to obtain secrets from fellow convicts and jail guards. She wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The question now was whether she could restore the damage she had caused, or if this was the end of the road. Back in Genoa City, Nick attempted to move ahead, but the scars were deep. He began to question everything, including his judgment, trust, and even his place in the Newman lineage. Sharon tried to console him, but Nick remained distant. He couldn't get over the notion that his own instincts had failed him. He had once loved Phyllis and had defended her countless times. And now, his commitment had almost cost him everything. As he stood outside Crimson Lights one evening, watching the sun set over the city, he made a choice. He'd forgive Phyllis, but not for her sake. For his own. He needed to let go of his anger before it ate him alive. However, forgiving did not imply forgetting or reconciliation. He'd never trust her again. With that, Nick walked away from the past, resolved to create something new and better. Phyllis's future remained uncertain. A court date was established. The evidence was damning. However, there were suspicions that the blackmailer might still be out there, that Phyllis wasn't acting alone. Some thought that the entire biotech cover-up was part of a broader conspiracy that extended far beyond Genoa City. If that's the case, Phyllis could hold the key to unearthing something explosive. And if she could prove it, she might be able to turn the tables one final time. But for the time being, she sat quietly, alone with her regrets, waiting for the new chapter to begin. The truth was revealed. Nick was free. However, the consequences had only just begun.